Monday, 1st of June 2026. 3 Asia-Pacific AI stories before your first coffee. Hanoi's law on artificial intelligence took effect on March 2026, making Vietnam the first ASEAN member state to enforce a standalone, binding AI statute. The law introduces a 4-tier risk classification spanning unacceptable, high, medium and low, and requires high-risk systems to register with a newly created national AI database while appointing a local legal representative. Penalty caps sit at 2 billion Vietnamese dong, roughly $78,000, with sector-specific transition windows of 12 to 18 months. Why it matters? Vietnam just set the regulatory template that the rest of ASEAN will benchmark against, and every AI vendor selling into the country's 100 million person market needs to map their products to the 4-tier framework now. Builders deploying high-risk systems, think credit scoring, hiring tools, or biometric ID face the sharpest compliance burden. Registration, local legal representation, and documentation obligations that mirror parts of the EU AI Act, but land in a market where enforcement infrastructure is still being stood up. Capital allocators should watch whether Thailand and the Philippines accelerate their own draft AI bills in response, because a patchwork of national regimes across ASEAN would raise cross-border deployment costs fast. The 12 to 18-month transition windows buy time, but procurement teams at multinationals operating regionally should start scoping compliance gaps today. Seoul's Ministry of Science and ICT reports Korea's semiconductor exports hit $31.91 billion in April 2026, up 173.3% year-on-year, the highest single category April figure on record. Total ICT exports reached $42.71 billion, a 125.9% annual jump, driven overwhelmingly by hyperscaler demand for HBM and DRAM destined for AI server clusters. Shipments to the United States alone surged 671.5% as American cloud builders accelerated their infrastructure build-outs. Why it matters? Korea's chip complex is now running on a single demand signal, AI server procurement from a handful of US hyperscalers, and the concentration is both a windfall and a vulnerability. Samsung and SK Hynix benefit directly, but the 671% US surge means any shift in American tariff policy, export controls, or capex cycles would ripple through Korean GDP within a quarter. Capital allocators should watch HBM contract pricing and hyperscaler capex guidance for signs of a plateau. For ASEAN and Japanese downstream assemblers, the bottleneck is no longer wafer supply but packaging and advanced substrate capacity, which is where the next round of investment is likely to land. Beijing and the 10 ASEAN member states finalised the ASEAN-China Action Plan for 2026 to 2030, structuring AI cooperation around 3 lanes: digital talent pipelines, open source model sharing, and AI security governance. The plan anchors its physical infrastructure in Nanning, Guangxi province, where the China-ASEAN Digital Academy and a dedicated AI Industry Innovation Center will serve as the primary coordination hubs. Vietnam's President To Lam visited the Nanning AI Application Cooperation Center earlier this year, signalling Hanoi's early buy-in to the framework. Why it matters? This is Beijing's most structured regional AI pitch to date, and it lands at a moment when ASEAN governments are shopping for compute access, training data partnerships and governance templates they can adapt domestically. The plan dovetails with China's 15th five-year plan and ASEAN's own Digital Master Plan 2030, giving both sides a shared policy calendar that makes joint funding rounds and standards alignment easier to schedule. Builders across Southeast Asia should watch the open source lane closely because Chinese foundation models offered through Nanning's hub could undercut the licensing economics of Western alternatives. Capital allocators tracking ASEAN II infrastructure will want to monitor whether Guangxi becomes a genuine talent and compute node or remains a symbolic venue, since early cohort sizes at the Digital Academy will be the clearest leading indicator. That is your AIinAsia briefing for today. Stay sharp, build well. See you tomorrow.